Hi, my name's Vince Sheehan and today I'd like to talk about The Day of the Triffids by Wyndham. I'd like to go through this novel, first published in 1951, exploring how it's put together in terms of its plot, its structure, also about some of the themes which crop up in this influential novel. Now, I suppose the book is really all about a struggle for survival. Why? Well, because the Earth has faced this terrible catastrophe whereby everyone who's witnessed these comets in the sky have been struck blind. But that's not all of it. Also, this catastrophe has created the conditions necessary for this lethal plant to flourish, the Triffids, which are always under control, used for medical experimentation, for business, etc. But now they're getting out of hand in this post-apocalyptic world. So the story centres around the character Mason. Mason's the protagonist, Bill Mason I think his name is, and Mason wakes up in hospital, and Mason isn't blind because he's had an accident with a Triffid. He studies Triffids, that's his passion, that's his livelihood in fact, and he's been stung, so he was in hospital with his head bandaged up. So he was spared this pandemic of blindness, which was caused by these comets in the sky. So he wakes up to find almost everyone around him blind in this hospital, and they don't know where to go. They're just completely aimless, confused, anxious, beside themselves, in worry and terror. Indeed, many people seem to want to end their lives because of this. And Mason manages to get out of the hospital and he makes his way into central London. Here he finds these marauding groups of blind people struggling to find food and shelter, struggling to make sense of what has happened. And Mason meets this woman, this young woman called Gisela. They both seem to like each other, they both hit it off with each other, they become firm friends. They find this flat, this luxurious flat, and then they notice this light coming from a tower, university buildings in Bloomsbury in central London, near the British Museum. And they make their way there and they realise that there's other survivors who can see. And this group seems to be run with a kind of military precision by this ex-army sergeant who, in a very organised way, has formed groups to scour the surrounding area for supplies, for fuel, and also to limit who they can let into this select group. And of course, this group is very much conscious of the morality behind their decisions. Who are they going to accept into this group? Who are they going to leave at the mercy of their blindness? And indeed, the Triffids, these plants, were beginning to take this opportunity in the deserted streets of England and start to come out and stamp their own authority on the environment. Mason and Gisela are actually kidnapped then from this group, and they're shackled to a gang of blind people and forced to go and find food. It's during this part of the book Mason sees firsthand how lethal the Triffids are. They're coming out, they're creeping around and stinging people, and killing them, and there's even evidence that they're eating people. On top of that, there seems to be this illness spreading. People are getting terrible stomach pains and dying. Mason escapes this group. He frees the blind people he's chained to, and he decides he wants to look for Gisela. He perhaps doesn't realise it at this point in the book, but he sees some kind of future with Gisela. He sees her as something to keep him going in these desperate times. So he teams up with this other guy, one of the people responsible for kidnapping him, called Coca, and they head out into the countryside. They end up at this place called Tynesham, which I think is in the west of England, the southwest of England. And here they encounter this other group of survivors, which are rather conservative and very rigid in their rules. They very much see this catastrophe as being some kind of judgment or punishment from God. Mason was hoping to find Gisela there, but she's not there. But they decide this place isn't for them anyway, so Mason and Coca leave, but they encounter more Triffids in the village there. They find another isolated group of survivors, and then Mason realises that Gisela was talking about going over to Sussex. So they head towards Sussex, and on the way Mason meets this small girl Susan, whose brother had been killed by a Triffid. He takes her under her wing, and they head off to Sussex, to this place called Sheehan, and lo and behold they do find Gisela there. Mason, of course, is overjoyed. The two are reunited, and you realise at that point that they're both very much in love with each other. And as well as Gisela, there's this other small group of people as well, most of them blind. Now at this point, some years have passed since the original catastrophe, since the original comet shower. And Mason and Gisela begin to ponder about the future of the human race and about the Triffids. And the Triffids at this point are just massing around any human settlement, waiting to break in. Thousands upon thousands of them. And despite Mason's best efforts to shoot them, they seem to be unstoppable. But Mason and Gisela then notice a helicopter in the sky, and this guy seems to have got a grip on things, particularly on the Isle of Wight, and he's managed to stop any more Triffids coming in there and through mass extermination programs. And both Mason and Gisela take some strength from this. But then at the end of the book they're confronted by another survivor who's started to lead other people in a more sinister way, and who wants to kind of create kind of a new feudal society whereby serfs or blind people are led by one or two people who can see, and Mason's invited to be one of those, but he doesn't like this guy. In fact, he recognises him from earlier on when he was enslaved by that gang, and he knows this guy's up to no good, and he doesn't want anything to do with these oppressive and frightening gangs. So Mason's kind of ordered about by these guys, but Mason quite cleverly gets them drunk. He disables their car, and Mason, Gisela, Susan and the other survivors escape Sheehan, and they found a new colony. And that's how we're left at the end of the book. The Day of the Triffids, of course, is very famous. There's a 1960s film, there's TV adaptations, etc. It's a very influential kind of dystopian, post-apocalyptic piece of science fiction. And, you know, some of the themes it covers are enduring. You know, the perennial theme of humans struggling for survival against the odds, playing upon the fear of commonplace things such as plants becoming deadly. It's perhaps a dormant fear in the back of our minds from the dawn of humanity, perhaps, and that fear of loneliness, about being left alone without any human contact. There's quite a lot about that in this book, how we're a social creature, we need others, yet Mason is very conscious of the fact that he could be alone, and that's not good for him or anybody else. There's a lot about breakdown of order as well, and kind of regression of human progress, of all those things which we have built up over millennia, of law and order, of morals, of relationships, of community, of economy, industry, agriculture. All these things suddenly breaking away in the wake of this catastrophe. So the book really explores two ideas, two threats to humankind. The idea of blindness, this terrible event which has happened on a worldwide scale, which Mason thinks may have been some kind of chemical weapon that has gone wrong in space, and also the idea of these marauding Triffids, these deadly plants going around stinging, killing people and devouring them. The book is an enjoyable read. Perhaps it isn't one of Wyndham's best novels. I personally prefer The Midwich Cuckoos. Perhaps there isn't quite enough in the plot for a book of this length as well. It tends to be just a lot of Mason in particular just travelling from here to there across the country. But you can't deny the power of this novel and the way it taps in to some real primal fears in the human psyche. Thanks for watching, and please check out the short slideshow after this. Bye.